want the old Joe Rogan back, and I think it's possible. I personally really don't have a problem with the guy. I only listen to like 1 or 2 episodes a month these days. There has to be an author or a scientist or like a political commentator that I like to be on there. I don't listen to the comedian episodes just for the lulz or anything like that anymore. The reason I don't have a problem with him particularly is I hate rich, lying asshole propagandists like Dennis Prager and Ben Shapiro. The only reason that these people are popular, have any influence whatsoever, is because they're propped up by billionaires to spread their lies for them. Like Prager, for example, that has an operating budget of $27 million a year. Do you think it costs that much to make those videos, to hire guest speakers and to do the research? No, it doesn't cost even 1/100th of that probably. So why does it cost that much? Because that's the only way to pump that material out there into the public sphere and to basically manufacture consent around their propagandist ideas. That's not what Rogan is. He's popular because he's like, or his show, because it's funny, it's interesting, it's entertaining, and it can be very compelling, although it's kind of turned into junk lately. The problem with Rogan is that he's an impressionable idiot who believes whatever the last person he talked to said. And the reason this is a problem is because he doesn't really get very many left-wingers anymore. And if you're going to say, well, that's because he is a right-winger, I mean, you must not watch the show, or maybe you just don't know how to think. What kinds of things is he against, that code left-wing, so to speak? Well, like bottom surgeries and puberty blockers for minors. You know who else is against that? Most of the gay people in Boulder, Colorado, which, as we all know, is a cesspool for right-wing ideologies. He's against defund the police, which is on the same popularity level as complete bans on abortions with no exceptions. Trans people in sports, the only thing I've ever heard him say that he's against is there's this specific example of a trans woman who wasn't telling anybody that they were a trans woman and fighting in, I don't know if it was kickboxing or some lower level MMA thing. And this person was just beating the shit out of other women. And he said that's not okay, but he has no problem with it if there's full disclosure. Now, that's different because that's one-on-one. I have no idea what his thoughts on, like, team sports is. He's against online censorship, which isn't really a left-wing thing, but I think people on the left have this sort of idea of like, well, if I just tell on you, then that'll fix it, right? So Zuckerberg and Jack Dorsey and the government, can we please like censor these people? He's against that. He was against the way California raised the threshold for theft and what counts as a felony versus a misdemeanor. And I've heard complete morons like Hassan say, no, I'm against Prop 34 or whatever it was that undid that because it doesn't tackle the underlying issue. Yeah, great. So you're for crime then. Criminals know what they can get away with, and they'll just do whatever they can get away with. He was against like what he called a lot of the COVID hysteria. I'd go into that, but I don't trust YouTube to allow me to talk about that without getting into trouble. He's for doing something about or with gun control, but he's against things like maybe a registry. That's not a lot of things. Meanwhile, he's completely behind ideas like trans people do exist. Gay marriage, if you haven't watched him completely dog walk Matt Walsh on that issue, then you should watch it. He's pro-choice. If, like, again, the episode where he had the guy from the Babylon Bee on there, he gave an angry and impassioned rebuke of that guy's views of no exceptions no matter what. He was for universal basic income. Now he's against it. Although I think if he just literally had Andrew Yang back on the show, he'd be for it again. He wants to end the drug war. He's for universal healthcare and universal education. The guy owns electric cars. He's in favor of tearing down the military-industrial complex. He is for ending corruption in government. He's for cleaning up the environment. Although he thinks defund the police is stupid, he's completely for police reform. The last time Ben Shapiro was on his show, he made him look like a complete imbecile with regard to the Colin Kaepernick situation, because he said to Ben, "Don't you think some good came out of that?" And slimy Ben was like, well, if you mean that Colin Kaepernick got rich by spreading his lies about police, then yes. And then they played a video for him of Colin Kaepernick giving this very, very sensible sort of speech in the locker room about why he's doing what he's doing. And Ben was like, wow, that makes perfect sense. Kaepernick gave that speech literally the first time he ever knelt. So it was always there, but this lying sack of shit was just the entire time pretending that that wasn't Kaepernick's goal or whatever. Joe Rogan thinks that Palestinians live under apartheid. He's had Abby Martin on multiple times. He had Roger Waters on a few years ago. Now you can claim, because of the Trump endorsement, because of the people he's having on the show lately, that he doesn't believe in those things, but he does. I'm confident that he does. The problem, like I said, is that he's an impressionable idiot who believes whatever the last person he talked to said. And you know who knows this? Right-wingers and con men. They are rich grifters, and they treat him basically like advertising space. The scientists and the left-wing people that he has on his show, for the most part, they're there to be like, hey, I wrote a book or discovered something, or like, I just want to hang out. He does have political activists, I guess we could call them, like an Abby Martin, that are on there every now and then. But the right-wingers, they go there to lie. He recently had this guy, Mark Andreessen. Now, Mark Andreessen is one of these, like, I think he was basically interviewing for a job in the Trump White House to be maybe part of the, maybe part of Doge. He went up there, and every single thing he said was a lie. He was talking about the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and how it's this rampant, unregulated government entity that goes around terrorizing big business and stifles competition and whatever. No, Mark Andreessen is a billionaire, and he stole at least $40 million from his customers, and that was just one of his scams. I mean, the guy has dozens of them. And every single thing he said about the Consumer Financial Bureau was just flat out incorrect. He is an anti-Robin Hood. He wants to steal from the poor, and he wants to have lax regulations and all these other means to be able to take their money and just keep it for himself. That's why he was there, to peddle this narrative that to lie and to make people think, oh, this thing is bad because of these reasons. Meanwhile, you know, there's the ulterior motive. Other examples, I mean, these aren't political, but, you know, like Graham Hancock, and recently he had on these two guys, Jimmy Corsetti and Dan Richards. They just all went up there and told a bunch of lies, and nobody was there to correct them. Now, that's not Joe's fault, because, you know, Mark Andreessen, the only reason I know he was lying about everything was because I heard an expert that works on these kinds of things specifically go over how everything he said was a lie. But nobody was there to correct any of these things. If you haven't, with regard to the other thing, this ancient archaeology stuff, Flint Dibble, he has this open letter to Joe Rogan. Go listen to that. It's really good. Now, I don't know how people get on Joe Rogan's show. I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, these billionaires contact Joe's agent. I would want Joe to go to invite only, because who the hell has ever heard of Mark Andreessen? Nobody. The only way he can get on there is, you know, by this, you know, complex scheme, essentially. Now, Joe has said all kinds of stupid stuff. I'm not excusing any of it. I'm just explaining it. But at the same time, I don't really blame him, because he's being lied to. But he is getting, I don't know. It's like he's losing his ability to think. I mean, he said that he completely lost all support for Kamala Harris because she picked Tim Walz for VP. And, you know, Rogan, he went on this rant about how, oh, Tim Walz, he lied about his rank in the military. Like, That's what it takes for you to not support Kamala Harris. I mean, the double standard, it's just unthinkable. Donald Trump is the biggest liar on the planet. I don't remember what episode this was. It was, I don't know, maybe like 3 or 4 years ago. But Rogan was talking to somebody and they said, have you ever met Donald Trump? Or they said, do you know Donald Trump? And Rogan said, I don't want to know him. And like he said it like in this really serious tone, because back then he really despised the guy. Like, here's Rogan talking about immigration.
And I know one of the policies of the immigrants, the children of immigrants being separated from their parents, which I'm 100% with you. It's immoral. It's disgusting. It saddens me that it's even considered an option.
Yeah.
It makes no sense. I don't give a fuck if they broke the law. You don't take parents and kids and separate them. You just fucking don't. It's disgusting. There's other ways around it. If you're saying, well, they shouldn't have broke the law. Maybe they shouldn't have broke the law. You don't get to do something that's 1,000 times worse than crossing a line in the dirt. That fucking imaginary line in the dirt, crossing that is nothing in comparison to your crime of stealing a baby from its mother. That's fucking insane. That's not America in 2018. That's just insane. And we wouldn't be doing that to Canadians, okay? If Canadians came over here with their beautiful, cute, blonde-haired kids, we're not stealing them from their fucking parents. And that's one of the reasons why it's sick.
What happened to that guy? I want that guy back. The left seems to think for some reason that if you tell on somebody or cancel them, or you get the government or Facebook to ban them, then that works. Well, it doesn't work. There's no beating Joe Rogan. And this kind of media is the future. And nobody's going to be the antidote to him. The average TV viewer, or like for news, is like, I know for Fox News, they're in their 70s, and it's the same for MSNBC. The average viewer is in their 70s. And like I said, nobody's going to be the left-wing Joe Rogan. I want Joe Rogan to become the left-wing Joe Rogan that I know he can be, and that I honestly, at his core, believe that he is. I think one of the problems is that there are left-wing grifters too. And I think the left-wing grifters have kind of sabotaged I guess I would say, hope of forming an alliance with the most influential podcaster on the planet. So for example, I'm going to specifically pick on David Pakman. David Pakman used to be a really solid and logical progressive, but he's just kind of turned into a hack recently. I mean, look at these screenshots of videos that he's done. The Biden brain mush report is completely bogus. No, it wasn't bogus. Trump is the real DEI candidate. He used to say things that are incredibly based, like calling out lefties when they literally say stuff that's racist. He called out the left for attacking him for going on Joe Rogan's show, and for when the left, for some reason, decided they needed to condemn Bernie Sanders simply for acknowledging that Joe Rogan gave him an endorsement. I think Pakman, at some point, he made a business decision that he's going to use Joe Rogan to generate content, kind of like clout chasing, sort of in a way. And then I think Pakman basically burned the bridge with that. And I think a lot of it started, well, I know it started during COVID. I don't think Pakman cares because it worked out for him. His channel has really exploded in recent years. But there's no shaming him or being the antidote to him to win. It's not possible. What I would hope is for sort of like two things to happen. I don't know if it's like an unofficial leftist policy or something to boycott Joe Rogan, but that needs to stop because, like I said, he'll believe whatever the last person he talked to said, and Joe already believes down the list most progressive things. If before the election the vast majority of all of his supporters were left-leaning people, I don't think he would have endorsed Trump. I really don't. The other thing, and this is more along the same lines, I guess, is he needs kind of like, almost like a Jon Stewart Crossfire moment, you know, when he went on that show and he was like, look, he just exposed it. He's like, look, this is theater and bullshit, and I'm asking you to stop. Now that like ended up, that was kind of a death sentence for that show, and that's not exactly what I want to happen, but somebody needs to go on there and be real with Joe. What's funny is Pakman would have been the perfect person for this. Kyle Kalinske could still do it. I'm pretty sure that Rogan still has respect for Kyle, and Kyle would gladly go on his show. Rogan has, like, this is a little bit of a tangent, but like to his credit, he's kind of tried to do this sort of balanced approach thing before. He did have Flint Dibble on with Graham Hancock, but then he didn't re-invite him, and then all these assholes went on there to lie about the truth and what was said. But, you know, he also did in the past, he had these episodes, this was 3 years ago, where he had a climate change skeptic and a climate change supporter on his show, like back to back. Not at the same time, because he wanted to let one person talk for multiple hours and then let the other person give their position. That's good. I genuinely think that Joe's basically been duped by people who know exactly what they're doing, whereas he's like really clueless. Kind of like what happened to Hawk Tua girl. I actually kind of do feel bad for her. 5 seconds ago, all of us agreed she was the biggest idiot and industry plant in history, and now all of a sudden she's a crypto scammer. Like, I promise you, she can't tell you what a blockchain is. Someone just needs to tell Joe with receipts in detail that he's been lied to. And also, I would want to make him answer for why he's supporting somebody who's basically against everything that he is for. For example, I talked about this, but he had that impassioned, heated debate about abortion with the Babylon Bee guy. And Joe gave the example of, you know, a teenage girl is raped and you're going to force her to carry that baby. And the Babylon Bee guy said, yeah. The problem with that is, Joe, you moved to a state where if that did happen to one of your daughters, then she would be forced to carry it. Joe needs to kind of sober up, I guess. He's in the rabbit hole. He's in the matrix. He needs to be pulled out. Again, you literally can't beat him. And by ignoring him, boycotting him, virtue signaling him, if we on the left do that, then that doesn't mean that people on the right aren't going to do it. It doesn't mean that he's not going to grow in popularity. You can't beat him. You got to join him. And we should join him because we're right. I'm tired of losing, and this is how we can win. See you tomorrow.